The doom that came to Logan. It was a still, quiet Tuesday afternoon in the suburbs. A full household's worth of wet laundry was all that stood between Sarah and the six-pack of Bundaberg rum she'd lined up for the evening, and she began unfolding. Cracked plastic pegs disintegrated to the touch, causing her to swear and add a mental note to pick up new wooden ones the next time Darryl went to Bunnings. After about half a basket had been hung out, Sarah shivered. All the hairs on her arms stood erect as a cool breeze picked up, coming with the sudden drop of pressure that heralded an incoming storm. Sarah looked at the skies, reluctant to start packing up what had already been hung out. The colour on the horizon was not a good omen, a sickly greenish blue radiating from the centre of the encroaching tempest. Sarah began hastily unpicking fabrics, gradually becoming aware that the omnipresent background chatter of magpies, kookaburra, and the neighbourhood whipbird had faded. In their place, a shrill whine, growing in intensity as the storm approached. Sarah finished bundling whatever was left on the line and turned back to the house. A resounding crack, accompanied by a brilliant burst of light, caused her to bolt upright in shock before she was almost knocked off her feet by the tremor that followed. Linen and clothing spilled across the lawn. Forgotten almost immediately, Sarah registered what she was seeing. The storm continued to grow as it advanced, and she watched as a tendril of luminous energy forked out towards the ground. At first, she thought it lightning, but the bolt moved too slowly and too erratically to be any lightning she'd seen. The tendril snaked its way lazily across the sky, drifting towards the earth, and where it made contact, another resounding crack echoed, pulsing with brilliant light. More tendrils emerged, crawling forth from the shape in the skies, branching and weaving as the colours intensified. Now shades of crimson and amber fluctuated with the green-blue pulses emerging from the storm. At the heart of the disturbance, another colour began to emerge, a deep shade, beyond purple, that strained and tore the eyes as Sarah wrenched her head back to the house. She wiped her face with one hand, ignoring the spatter of red liquid now smeared across her palm, thinking only of her children. Shelter. They had to find shelter. In a cyclone, the safest place to be should be the smallest room in the house, as it should be best reinforced. She ran inside, closing the glass door behind her in the vain hope that it would provide some protection against the oncoming devastation. Her eldest child was exactly where they were when she went outside, plastered to the couch with a set of heavy-duty headphones pumping something carefully selected to help her get through the day. "Tiffany!" yelled Sarah, gesturing violently for her to pull the headphones off. Tiffany could obviously sense something wasn't right, as she complied with an unprecedented lack of oppositional defiance, and the jaded expression on her daughter's face was quickly replaced with shock as she registered the sound of the storm outside, punctuated by those shocking impacts. Outside, they could hear screaming begin to resound throughout the neighbourhood, panicked and anxious neighbours trying to strap down and post up whatever they could in the time they had before it made contact. "Help me find your brothers," barked Sarah, eyes scanning the usual places the twins like to hide out, tops of furnitures and cupboards, under sinks, and in crawl spaces. "Grab them and come with me to the toilet. I'll get a mattress and we can hold out there." The two separated, hurriedly combing the house for Jason and Derek as the flashes came more insistently. Sarah found Derek in the garage, crawled under the Commodore and mucking around with the undercarriage. She grabbed his hand, made sure his head was out of clearance, and pulled him out from under the vehicle. "Come with Mummy," she whispered to him. "It's very important to be brave right now." Leading him by the hand, they went for the bathroom. She stopping only to grab a mattress off the guest bed, then finding Tiffany and Jason already inside, eyes wide, gripping tightly to the fixtures. "Everything is going to be okay," she reassured them, although the words could not take root in her own head. What she'd seen was unnatural, too far outside her scope of reference to fully process. Overhead, the storm grew louder and more violent, strange colours illuminating the interior throughout the window. For 5 tense minutes, they huddled in the bathroom together, shaking in fear as a solid impact rocked the house to its foundations. Flecks of paint cascaded from the roof overhead as the bathroom light flickered and died. Jason started crying, and Derek was soon to follow. Sarah comforted them as best she could with firm squeezes and gentle words, waiting for the storm to pass. After another few minutes, the shaking faded. Sarah checked her children first, making sure they were intact for a quick self-assessment. Blood. On her hands. Where had that come from? Eyes, still stinging, she washed them in the bathroom sink and looked at her reflection. Her eyes were bloodshot, and eyelids were swollen around the rim, but she could still see. Could still hear, too, as the effects of the loud impacts began to fade. Other sounds filtered in. Screaming. She could still hear screaming. Not the confused panic from earlier either, but sharp, genuine pain and horror. She could smell fire on the wind. And... shit, was that a gunshot? It must have been, as another came. And another. Sarah muttered sharply to her offspring, "Stay here," and edged out of the bathroom towards the interior of the house. She made her way to the living room and looked outside. Through the glass, she could see the haze of distant fires, still hearing screams echo across the neighborhood. The sky was still wrong, somehow, warped and distorted by the passage of whatever had ripped its way through. She turned back towards her bathroom, and the attention was captured by a crater gouged through most of what had used to be her kitchen. A black smear covered the base of the indent. What she assumed to be soot turned out to be something sticky, closer to tar in composition upon contact. A hissing noise, lower pitched than the sharp cracks and cries echoing outside, slowly began to build, and she turned towards the source. A squat, black shape now blocked the passage to the bathroom, cutting her off from her children. The shape unfurled, squat form concealing geometries that should not have existed in the space they emerged from, as a sinuous frame stretched to fill the corridor. A single, lidless, unblinking eye swam into focus and latched onto Sarah as she struggled to comprehend what she was seeing. A foul, rank odor assaulted the senses as the creature exhaled, then languidly appeared to sniff the air, stretching towards Sarah. A cry came from behind it, one she recognized as Derek, and the creature snapped around, inverting the region normally associated with the head through its own torso, attention focused on the new stimuli. Sarah grimaced, then cast around her for something to use as leverage. "Tiffany," she yelled, calmly yet forcefully, "get your brothers and take him out the bathroom window. I'll be with you soon." "As for you, you bastard, eye up front," she cried, hurling the first object that came to hand at the monstrosity. A can opener sailed through the air, impacting on the creature with a wet thud. The monstrosity reacted violently, lashing out towards Sarah with a stiffened pseudopod as a distended maw began to emerge from its form, rows upon rows of jagged white teeth contrasting starkly against the moist black frame. Sarah took a step backwards, casting around for something with a bit more heft to it. A rolling pin, an old oak relic passed down from her grandmother, the wood gnarled and hardened with age. That'd do for the right hand. Bring it down hard enough and she reckoned she could easily crack a skull. As for the left, there, Daryl's fishing knife, bought for a deep-sea expedition they'd chartered for a friend's buck party that never got off the ground after the relationship predictably fell apart. About 9 inches long, with a wicked serration sold as useful for filleting. Perfect for the left. Sarah steeled herself, threat to her children more than enough to overcome the bone-deep fear generated by the creature's presence. "Come on then, fuck-knuckle," she yelled, brandishing both utensils like she was outfitted with the armor of God. The creature lurched towards her, spreading its form wide to cut off any potential avenue of attack or escape. Sarah put the rolling pin down as hard as she could on the center of mass, before driving the fishing knife directly into the exposed eyeball. A burst of visceral fluid poured forth as the eyeball ruptured, and black tendrils appeared to deflate, losing stability and cohesion. The maw continued to snap at her, and she brought the rolling pin down again, smashing teeth and spraying gore against the kitchen's interior. She calmed herself and took a step back. "Bloody well earned those rums today," she thought, and stepped past the body to try and meet up with her children. A moist tendril slapped against her ankle as she stepped away, adhesive force tearing at the skin, drawing yet more blood. She looked down and slashed with the knife, breaking loose from the grip, yet the tendril remained firmly affixed. She watched in horror as the black snake coiled around her ankle, erupted with pinpricks. Dozens, no, hundreds of eyes beginning to emerge, not just on the remaining portion, but against the surface of the creature's black frame. Not all eyeballs either. As the pain in her leg grew, she realized that innumerous mouths were also breaking forth. Another tendril shot forth from the creature with sickening speed, and another, smothering Sarah's face and body, slowly beginning to consume her entirely. As the darkness fell, this is the end of this story.